What do you think about the I hate men train?
I don't. No.
That was so tea. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a guest here, Lauren, and she's also currently studying psychology. So we definitely have a lot of good conversations surrounding things that we learn in our lectures.
We met like beginning of first year. We're both psych students, both second year. I'm really excited because like all of our conversations are so like
Our conversations could be a podcast, basically.
in itself. Yes.
Yeah.
No, when you think about like what do psych students do when they need mental health support?
We go to our peers.
My therapist
This
right
is
here.
my therapist too. So, what topics are we going to be talking about today? It's a hot topic.
The psychology behind
Attachment and detachment.
Honestly, I feel like this is such an important topic, especially now. There's so much going on with TikTok.
On social media, yeah.
Yes, they blow it out of proportion
I
and they
100%
misrepresent
agree.
everything. There's a lot of pseudoscience going around.
Yeah.
So much
And I
pseudoscience.
feel like people actually aren't aware of different attachment styles and how they can be negative and toxic.
Yeah.
And how a lot of girls and guys, you're falling into these traps, and it's actually because of your attachment style and you may not recognize it. So if you have this knowledge, then maybe you'll be able to move forward in better ways in your relationships, whether they're romantic or just platonic friendships.
I think it's really interesting that like early research about attachments, they really thought that attachment was fixed and they thought like you only have one attachment. And I think that that's also something in TikTok a lot of people run with. They think, okay, like what's your attachment style? And you do a lot of research. But the more recent research actually shows that attachment is really based on like person to person. I'm going to have a different attachment to you than I'm going to have like with my mom, with my significant other.
That's actually so true. So we don't really recognize that we have different types of attachment with different people based on what they give us.
You're not going to be anxiously attached to everybody, but you could be anxiously attached to your significant other, or vice versa. You could be an avoidant attachment to your significant other, and you could be an anxious attachment to your friend. You never know. When you think that attachment is fixed, it kind of gives people an excuse to act toxic, I guess.
Oh, kind of, they're playing the victim, like, or
Exactly.
because of my past experiences, because this is my attachment style, but that's not a good excuse.
If you have an unhealthy attachment style, then you have the ability to change it.
So I think that first piece is recognizing what your attachment style is to figure out if you actually have toxic and unhealthy ways of attaching to people. And something I want to get into is when people love bomb each other. And I feel like that can also happen in friendships. You become friends with somebody so quickly, and then you just meet all of these milestones in your friendship, and you kind of put aside all of the bad traits of that person, and then they all kind of build up in the end because then you start to realize them.
The first step to healthy relationships is being self-aware.
We are coded to just suppress so much. Another thing that can happen is when we suppress things so much, and as soon as we get comfort from one person, we'll attach to them really quickly and trust them really quickly when we actually shouldn't be trusting them that quickly. Another topic that we're going to get into later is healthy detachment. So why is detachment important?
For a number of reasons, because oftentimes, like we were saying about familiarity, it's really important that we only keep things in our lives that are
contributing to our growth and health. And something that I see on social media is a lot of people don't know how to detach, and there's really harmful trends that are being pushed and narratives such as doing it for the plot. Like, oh, let's go back into this unhealthy relationship just for the plot. But no, why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
It hurts my soul. Even just like with my friends, when I see them going back to these unhealthy connections, I know that it's a sense of comfort, but in the long run, what is going to be good for you?
Another topic that we're going to talk about that is important is detaching from your old self, and the importance and the psychology behind that. Your brain literally rewires itself. While you are growing as a person, your brain is rewiring itself with subconsciously.
Yeah, your dopamine pathways are also rewiring when you're choosing different circumstances and not going into the same patterns. A change of pattern is when your brain is going to rewire.
Exactly, because dopamine targets the reward system.
So our reward circuit will go off for things that could actually be really bad for us. And you're getting dopamine from this, and that means it's going to fuel you. Your brain is going to think it's a good thing. So you're going to get into this pattern of doing it over and over again. And I think that's how toxic cycles tend to continue, especially if that person, that friendship, in that relationship is giving you a good sense, like a good sense of comfort or whatever it may be. There could be so many underlying issues there, but since your brain is getting that dopamine or whatever feel-good hormones, your brain thinks that it's a good thing.
Do not give in to cheap dopamine.
Don't give in to cheap dopamine. For real.
People think in order to be better, you have to show results. The first step to being better in literally anything is just being self-aware. In order to change, you need to accept the parts of you that you no longer want.
Acceptance, yeah. And in order to detach from your past self, you have to accept your past, but you also can't let it hold you down. I'm going to bring up a different point here.
Yeah.
An evidence portfolio. I don't know if you've ever done that before when you journal. So basically, you just write down all of your really small accomplishments. It could be any achievements, small or big. And when you write them down, it actually helps you to process your internal change. And by making an evidence portfolio, I think that you're able to see who you are visually, and then it will be easier to detach from those past selves that you don't really align with anymore.
This summer, I'm gonna get more into journaling and self-reflection.
With me? Yeah,
Of
we're gonna journal
course!
together.
Dude, this girl holds me accountable. Like, everything to do with, like, bettering myself. We need to talk about our book club because
Oh, yeah.
we have this thing where, like, we bought a book. I recommend you do this with your friends. Buy a book and have a little book club with your friends. We were reading the 48
Laws of Power,
48
yeah.
Laws of Power.
To add on to the book club, I think reflecting with your friends, if you have emotionally intelligent and mature friends, it's really good to reflect with them and have these conversations.
So good. You gain so much insight from different perspectives from different people. It's just part of being an emotionally intelligent person.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into the different attachment styles and explain briefly what each of them are. We're going to be referencing the Mary Ainsworth strange situation experiment because that is kind of what was the foreground of developing the different attachment styles.
So early research really looked at how attachment styles are developed, and it's basically developed from childhood.
Like the reaction a child has to their caregiver leaving will tell you what their attachment style is, basically.
Attachments that we had with our caregivers really shape our future attachments. Basically, the study was looking at how children reacted in different control groups when their parents left them with a stranger and how each child reacted to being reunited with their parents.
Also, something to note is that all of these child development theories, all of the connections we make in our childhood, they stick with us into adulthood. So that's why it's such a critical period. And that's why we look back to childhood and our caregivers to figure out what our attachment style will be now.
But remember, it is not fixed.
You have the power to change.
You have the power to change it.
So first we have secure attachment. So it is the ideal attachment. If a child is in a room with their parent and they see their parent as a safe base and then their parent leaves, in a secure attachment, the child would at first cry a bit and be a little upset and overwhelmed. However, once the parent and the child are reunited, then the parent is able to soothe them and calm them down. So in that scenario, the caregiver, the parent, is a secure attachment for the child.
So when we think about anxious attachment, we can think about in terms of this study as well. When the primary caregiver left the room and the child was with the stranger, the child obviously reacted by screaming, crying, showing visible discomfort. Once the parent was reunited with the child, after some time, the child was able to be soothed, but they showed behaviors like being super clingy. They're less likely to venture off. If we think of like the secure attachment where the children, they're okay exploring the room. I believe in this study, it was like a playroom, so there was lots of toys for the child.
They kind of just like went back into their regular normal routine.
Exactly. But with the anxious attached child, even though the parent was there, the child was still being very, very clingy and was not open to exploring or talking to the stranger or playing with the toys. They really, really wanted to stick with their primary caregiver.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of an example of anxious attached in early life.
How could that manifest into your adulthood as well with that clinginess piece?
Exactly, because when you think about these anxious attachments, obviously you're not going to be like that as an adult with your parent. I mean, maybe you will. So when we're thinking about romantic relationships and even friendships, it could be like, oh my gosh, this person isn't like, say that I have the anxious attachment to Zara. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Zara hasn't messaged me back. She hates me. She's died. There, like my brain is gonna go to the most extreme examples, and Zara who is securely attached is gonna be like,
What is happening?
What's happening?
I'm not gonna understand that, and it might push me away as well.
Yeah, especially anxiously attached people and avoidance. That is like the worst combo.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing to note is like anxiously attached people, they do love very hard, but they panic. They panic hard and they're very, very clingy. And sometimes that can be overwhelming for people and you can end up doing the opposite. Instead of getting that person to come closer to you, it can actually push that person away.
100%, yeah.
Another thing to note is anxiously attached people, it can actually stem from inconsistent affection in childhood. A lot of these attachment styles, they come from however that parent is treating the child. And so when we talk about these different children in this Ainsworth study, we get a very good idea about the type of connection that the parent is displaying towards this child. And also like the relationship that the child is exposed to. Their mom and dad's relationship can have really big impacts.
So, securely attached folks are comfortable with intimacy and independence. Well, securely attached people won't freak out if the other person in the relationship needs their own time sometimes, has their own plans separate of them, and they tend to have trusting long term relationships.
This is what you should definitely strive for.
So, an example is a person with a secure attachment style is not going to freak out if they don't get a text back immediately because they have the trust and they have the knowledge that that person is going to come back. They're not anxious and they're not avoidant.
So yeah, the anxious attachment comes from the fear of being abandoned or neglected. It's unpredictable. The
Yeah.
relation sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down.
So they don't know if that person's going to return to them. In avoidant, the child learns that showing emotion is not going to get them a response from their caregiver, which is why when their caregiver leaves, they're not going to have a crazy reaction where they're crying or upset because it's kind of just something that they're expecting. They're expecting their caregiver to not give them the response that they need.
Because crying is a child's
It's how they communicate that they need something.
Exactly.
So if the child is not crying when their parent leaves, that shows that they're not expecting their need to be met.
It's almost kind of like learned hopelessness.
That's really sad.
That is really sad. Yeah. It's like when something occurs so much that
it's just an expectation at that point.
Yeah, it kind of connects to like learned hopelessness where this child has been neglected just one too many times and they don't even see the point in
trying to communicate what they need or what they want.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, okay, I'm getting left. That's tea.
Well, how does that translate into adulthood? In adulthood, somebody with an avoidant attachment style is emotionally distant. So anxious is clingy, but avoidant is standoffish. So it's kind of like the opposite.
You know, like the commitment phobe or the person that's like, you thought the first date went really, really well and all of a sudden they ghosted you? Probably an avoidant.
So I guess people who are scared of commitment could potentially have that attachment style.
Yeah, but I find that with hookup culture, people are leaning more towards avoidant attachments because everyone is scared
that's true.
to be rejected.
Yeah.
So it's like nobody's actually being vulnerable. Does that make sense?
Vulnerable. Yeah, no, that does make sense, honestly. Another example for the avoidant attachment style is that they may have trouble saying things like, I love you.
Or physical touch. Avoidance may have some kind of problem with physical touch. Don't get me wrong, it may be something else. Just because somebody doesn't like physical touch doesn't mean they're an avoidant. But no. Finally, we have the disorganized attachment. This is also sometimes called like the fearful avoidant. It's definitely, like we said, stemming from like trauma or abuse. In the Ainsworth studies, they noticed that some kids did not fit into the three categories. So that's kind of where like the disorganized attachment stemmed from. Exactly. These kids behaved in confusing ways, like gazing at the parents, acting like they didn't recognize them, displaying freezing in place, even displaying fear towards a caregiver. Obviously, the researchers saw this as like a red flag, like, hey, what's going on here? Why are these children reacting to their caregiver this way? It often happens when the caregiver uses fear and punishment. Essentially,
it's like discipline, but it's a very unhealthy way to discipline, right?
It's like instilling fear in the child. Like the child literally fears their caregiver. So think about how that can inspire into like future relationships.
In adulthood,
Exactly. And it can also, I think, one thing to know that's really dangerous is a lot of these children in the disorganized category, when they grow up around so much abuse and it's seen as normal, they don't know anything else, they're often likely to seek out familiar bonds like that and abusive relationships. So the cycle, it just continues into adulthood.
And additionally, to add on to that, even if you're not a disorganized attachment style, I think that happens to everybody. You seek out what you know is comfortable. So if you
Of
have
course.
seen toxic portrayals of things, that's what you're going to seek out. If you have gotten unhealthy relationships in the past, whether that's with your parents or other friendships or past relationships, you're probably going to go for that same comfortable type of thing unless you're
So true.
self-aware.
Self-awareness is the first
Self-awareness.
step, guys. I
Hmm.
feel like that should be like the headline.
Yeah,
Self-awareness is the first step.
in attachment and detachment.
Yes. Disorganized attached people. The anxious side of them really wants and craves that affection. But the fear of getting hurt kicks in and they're like, hold on a second, kind of have this like avoidance side to them. It may even cause in like later years sabotaging even healthy relationships. When somebody is not used to having a healthy and stable relationship, they're not going to know how to approach that. They're
Mhm.
not going to know what is good, what is bad, and also the saying hurt people is honestly so true, and the abuse becomes the abuser because
That's all your brain knows. And something
yeah,
unknown to your brain is scary to your brain, and your brain's not going to want to put yourself in that situation. So even if it's healthy for you, if your brain doesn't know it, it's going to be uncomfortable
for sure,
and you're going to want to go back to the toxic or the unhealthy ways that your brain does know and is comfortable with.
for sure. You may be the one acting as the abuser
Mhm.
now in a healthy relationship.
So right now we're talking about our childhood, but I think you also have to look at yourself now, presently, and what actions and behaviors do you hold? Do you often ghost people, or do you feel scared to let people in, or do you let people in too fast? You have to recognize your own pattern.
That's very true. Question: do you think that when you are ending a relationship with somebody, and this could be, it doesn't have to be romantic, it
Yeah,
could
it
be
could be a
anything,
friendship.
do you think that you owe somebody an explanation that you are of why, or that you are cutting a cord with them?
I think usually before you end a friendship or a relationship, you've probably brought up the issues that you have, right? At least
Right.
one time. I think communication is always necessary. So I feel like cutting someone off without giving them that reason and closure and something to work with to improve themselves on. Because how will
Exactly.
they know the problem if you're not telling them, right?
This
So
is
it's
so
unfair to
true.
just cut somebody off without telling them or to just dump it all on them at the end. I think that happens a lot. People will dump all of
For
these
sure.
complaints and like things that they did not appreciate during the friendship or relationship. They'll dump it on you at the end. And it didn't even give you a chance to fix it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's kind of too late now.
Yeah, because if they don't know, if they're not aware, self awareness, if they're not
Self-awareness.
aware of the actions that are unhealthy or that are bothering you, then how are they going to fix it? That's why I think if you have come to this person and communicated with them multiple times and they're just not understanding or hearing you out or taking action, if it's just repetitive, like it's an I'm sorry and then they do the exact same action, that's horrible. That's actually one of my pet peeves. It's just like a one sided type of
It has
thing.
to be a give and take.
To answer your question, like explanation should be given,
Yes.
but you don't always owe people a second chance. Not everybody owes you a second chance as much as like we'd want to.
Communication is a two-way street.
Yeah. But also, what do you think about this? Yes, communication, but what about action?
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because I
Listen,
think for me, I'm somebody who values action. You can communicate things 1,000 times, you can apologize 1,000 times, but if your actions are not exhibiting like the change or like a healthy behavior, then to me, the communication is just kind of out the window. It's not really working.
listen, my mom always taught me an apology without change is manipulation.
Manipulation. Damn, she pulled out the M word.
That stuck with me my whole
Yeah,
childhood. An apology without change is
I agree
manipulation.
with that. Then you're just going to keep falling into the same habits and they're basically taking advantage of you, right?
If you're apologizing to somebody and you have no intention of actually acting on that change, it is
It is
manipulation
that's 100%
because you're
manipulation.
lying
That's
for your own
definitely.
personal gain.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're lying for your own personal
And
gain.
that's where intention comes in about.
Consideration is a love language in itself.
Oh, wow, that's deep.
So basically, to sum it up, secure is like, okay, I'm comfortable with you. I'm fine if you leave. I miss you, but I'm okay with it. Anxious is like, oh my God, I love you so much. Never leave me. Like, you leave me, you hate me.
Clingy.
Yes. Avoidant is like, I don't care if you're here. I don't care if you're gone.
It's kind of like nonchalant, but like
Yeah.
very unhealthy.
Nonchalant final boss. I'm just kidding.
I don't like nonchalant.
We
You can be
don't.
nonchalant to everyone else. Don't be nonchalant to me. It's
We're
kind of
adults
excuse.
here. We need to show our
Yeah.
emotions.
So now that we have the foundation of the different attachment styles, let's see how these actually play out in real life.
Now let's talk about how do we break these unhealthy attachments. As we said, self-awareness is literally the first step. You have to recognize the pattern. In order to break any kind of cycle, any kind of pattern, you have to recognize that there is a pattern.
Yep. And to add to that, sometimes people are always in this mindset of, I'm not the problem, but maybe you are, and maybe putting yourself in that situation is your problem.
So true. Subjecting yourself to the pattern itself is contributing to it.
We have to work on not blaming others and to focus internally on the root of our problems.
You need to also look at like how you aid in your own suffering. We are not in control of what happens to us. However, it's really crucial that we look at how we aid in our own suffering. You are not a victim in everything.
Sometimes our brain, to comfort ourselves, we put ourselves in the victim mindset because it's comforting. Even if we did something wrong, whether it was something small or big,
so true,
we want to find a reason to blame the other person so we can feel better about ourselves. And that's just like a human trait.
Yeah. And our brains also subconsciously ignore our bad traits and they tend to overestimate our good qualities. So the second thing that you can do that's really important, I feel like a lot of people forget that therapy is not just for people who have quote unquote mental illnesses or problems. Therapy is a tool that is useful for everybody. It doesn't matter if you think you have something, you don't think you have something. Remember that therapy is just somebody that is
looking at your life from an outside perspective, and they can help you with that self-awareness that we're talking about.
And it's from a professional lens. We will never perceive ourselves the way that other people perceive us.
We might not pick up on everything.
Exactly.
And the people around us might not be comfortable to tell us what we might not be picking up on.
One thing that we touched a little bit on before is like the familiarity effect. You see it a lot in things where people are like, why does that person want to date a toxic person? Or when you recognize somebody is toxic, why do you stay? It's not that somebody wants to be in a toxic relationship or have a toxic friendship, but often because that's what they're used to, that's what's familiar to them, and they don't know any different. When we talk about like the reward system,
the dopamine pathways and how they play into reinforcing unhealthy behaviors.
You get dopamine from these constant up and downs and inconsistent relationships. One misconception about abusive relationships I find is that people who are in abusive relationships are constantly experiencing abuse. But actually, it could be like 95% good and 5% abuse. It's this honeymoon stage, the after abuse, that is what makes it so addicting. This up and down cycle, the variation interval.
That's what actually attaches the victim to the abuser, because they see the reward at the end and it makes them push aside all of the abuse that they went through.
Okay, so
the next thing we're going to talk about, the ick. We're going to relate it to a psychological concept.
Yeah, so basically we're going to talk about the psychology behind the ick. Is the ick a good thing or is it self-sabotage?
Well, I feel like sometimes it's actually a natural reaction. Can you really blame yourself if you're losing attraction over something?
All of us have experienced the ick.
One too many times, girl.
When you are attracted to somebody and you get that sudden cringe, disgusted feeling with them, there's actually some research behind why we do that.
Oh, I've mentioned before in a previous video about cognitive dissonance. So that's when the actions or behaviors are not aligning with the attitude that we have in mind.
When you're attracted to somebody, it's really common that we put this person on a pedestal. We have
expectations for them.
Correct. Oftentimes, when you don't know anybody, your brain is going to make up these assumptions about somebody, what they like, who they are as a person. If that person does not meet those expectations, this cognitive dissonance causes your brain to feel discomfort when your beliefs do not match up with your actions. This can actually explain the ick, this like weird feeling you get with somebody.
You kind of mentioned how we have gaps in what we know about a person. We'll fill them in. When we fill those gaps in, it's actually not that true person. It's what we imagine of them, what we want of them. At the end of the day, that's not actually that person. So when we put people on pedestals, we're actually just fantasizing. And since that's not reality, we eventually might be let down. And in terms of dissonance, if that person is not meeting that expectation that you fantasized about, you're going to experience the mental discomfort.
The other side of this, the ick can also be self-sabotage. I know this is something that's like very, very important that people think about, because it's like sometimes you have to understand that the ick is actually going to block your blessings.
It's actually a you issue.
My question is, what is the craziest ick that you've ever got?
This is gonna sound so bad.
No, you can say it.
when I'm like better than a man mentally, like mentally and emotionally better than a man, I mean this in the most humble way.
Yes. I love that.
Okay, so I asked ChatGPT to kind of reword my ick nicely, so I'm gonna share it with you guys. A man without depth or intellect is an immediate no for me. Yeah,
Can we get some snaps?
you heard it. Men who think vibes can replace intelligence.
Ooh.
Thank you, ChatGPT,
Thank you,
for
ChatGPT.
making my words come off as a little nicer. I don't want to be a man hater because I'm not a man hater.
Okay,
I have a hot
okay,
take
okay,
for
okay,
you
okay.
now. What do you think about the I hate men train?
I don't. No.
Okay, you don't like it?
No.
Okay, neither do I. I think it's very toxic.
No.
And
Okay. Like here's my thing. I think that when
you can't stereotype all men.
I don't want to listen. Like I
Yeah.
don't want the.
That was so tea. No, but actually, I agree.
There is such a hypocrisy
Yep.
in social media today that's like people are way too okay with hating on men.
If you flip it the other way, like I would not like it if a man said, "Oh, all women are haters, all women are cheaters, all women are this and that."
It's very normalized for
Mhm.
people to say I hate men. If a man came on social media and said I hate women, he would get flamed.
Also, what type of man do you want to attract? If you're just saying I hate men, that's not very feminine, that's not very healed of you. That's a very unhealed term to use. So you're not going to attract a healed or a mature or a masculine man if you're on this I hate men train.
So our brains love consistency. So if something shatters that rose-colored glasses, we often overcorrect. Speaking of this, attachment styles can actually play a role in the ick. So people with avoidant attachment might unconsciously use the ick as a defense mechanism. This is something super important. Avoidants value independence. Because avoidants value their independence so much, I think when they get close to people, it can cause them to give themselves the ick almost. This has happened to me before.
I've experienced that too. I've become more aware of it recently. Like, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to share everything about myself with someone and to like rely on somebody emotionally. And to me, I'm like, wait, that's a bit scary because I'm really used to being independent.
I've done a lot of self-reflection in the past few months.
Me too.
Everybody should constantly
Yeah, but especially because it was like the new year and things like that.
Yeah, I realized a lot of the times I got the ick was actually self-sabotaging. This year and always, but I'm really focusing on learning the difference between what is important and what isn't important. Because when you think about the ick, some things that are giving you the ick, is that thing really that important that you can that it's a turn off to
Is
you?
it going to impact the whole relationship?
Exactly. But to clarify, the ick may actually be signaling something valid.
Yeah.
Like,
so that's why it's so important to establish which attachment style you are falling under. And from there, maybe you can figure out what end of the spectrum that ick is coming from.
There is some research to suggest an evolutionary, like an innate reason for this. We might subconsciously focus on different turnoffs, like when we're thinking about like mate selection in
Mate selection theory.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
Evolutionary theory. So
And can I just say something? On social media, there's this misconception that women are gold diggers just because they want a man to provide for them, maybe, or because they want luxurious things. But scientifically, psychologically, women are attracted to somebody who will provide for them.
yes.
And men actually use their wealth to gain attention from women scientifically and psychologically. So it's literally just our innate behaviors. We can't even say that, oh, you're a gold digger.
People, if you don't want a traditional relationship, that's 100% up to you. But don't bash people that want traditional relationships. And also, people forget that you can take on different emotional responsibilities as well.
Biologically, we have different traits that we can contribute. And that's why when you look at the studies, what a man finds attractive in a woman versus what a woman finds attractive in a man,
it's different.
It is different, yeah. Well, men look for fertility just biologically. I'm not saying that they openly are like, oh, I'm looking for a fertile woman. No. Biologically, they're looking for a fertile woman.
This is backed by, like, we learned this in class.
And women look for
stability, because when we look back, as women, our innate instincts are to find a man that will be able to increase the chance of survival of us and our offspring. And in order to do that, that person has to have the resources to do so. Back in the day, it would be food, it would be water, stable location, whatever it be. Now
society has evolved now.
I think that a lot of people don't realize that there's actually an equation to relations. Like, remember the relationship equation?
There's you want to benefit what you're giving as well.
Both parties, no matter what it is, have to be putting in the same amount of sacrifice to get the same amount of benefits out. That is the equation.
In my religion, in Islam, that's actually what we're taught as well. The man has to provide for the woman, but the woman has other things that she provides, but she does not have to provide financially. In Islam, men have to provide financially for their family.
I've realized about myself, get the ick very easily. I'm figuring out the ick, the root of the ick, and I'm not letting it impact me.
Self-sabotage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But one ick that I think is like, I've thought about it, is like if I like a guy.
What did I just hear this? Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is healing. Healing can be very performative sometimes, especially on social media, especially if you feel you're trying to prove a point to somebody.
Yeah.
So that's where detachment comes into play, because to truly detach, it can't be performative. It actually has to be internal and from you.
Block them.
Block them. Agree on that one. Block them, sister.
Brother.
Block
Don't
them.
discriminate.
Okay, this also kind of relates back to cognitive dissonance, because people who post things like grateful, blessed, healed, but are not actually exhibiting the actions of being healed.
The inner work.
Your actions are not actually aligning with your mindset.
The reality is, real healing is messy. You're not going to have like, it's never this linear site. It's always up and down. One day you're gonna feel crappy, and healing can be from anything. You don't have to heal from
a person. It could be from a situation,
or
from
even
events.
yourself.
Yeah, from your own behaviors and things that you've put yourself through.
For sure. There's so many ways of healing, and from traumatic events as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not putting healing in a box of like relationship wise. This is for everything. It's messy, and it takes a lot of work and self-reflection.
Yeah. And additional to just self-reflection, while you're doing that reflection, you also have to recognize what you're really attaching to, what mindsets and beliefs you're still holding on to, and what situations you're holding on to. So rumination is when you replay scenarios in your head over and over again. It's not healthy. I'm guilty of it. I replay past scenarios in my head over and over again and imagine different ways I could have dealt with things. But the truth is, you should not be doing that, because you're feeding your energy into those situations that are in the past. And the reality is you have to detach from them.
You're blocking your blessings also, and wasting your energy.
Blessings. I like that line a lot.
You're wasting potential and energy on things that are not serving you.
Yeah.
And you can be missing out on things that do serve you. You can be just like so focused on what you didn't do, what you didn't say, what you could have said, that you're not living in the present. This is something that I am so guilty of. And I really, really try to live in the present.
Yeah.
Just, this is why, like, I feel like so many things you were talking about are so useful, like journaling, stuff like that. It's like,
it helps you to detach from the past.
Yeah.
Because that's what's so necessary, is detaching from the past, detaching from outcomes, and detaching from expectations you hold on other people, and even from expectations we hold on ourselves. We have to detach from that because we don't always meet our expectations, like we mentioned in cognitive dissonance theory. So once you detach from these high expectations you're placing yourself in, you're placing your life in, you're placing other people in, then you're going to have a lot more comfort internally and more energy to actually put towards your goals and towards your progress and effort. 100%.
Honestly, rumination is a killer of happiness. I'm a chronic overthinker.
Me too. It's both a blessing and a curse, because overthinking is great to do the self-reflection.
Yeah.
But it gets to a point, like, for example, rumination. It gets to a point you have to stop yourself.
You see, guys, we're self-aware. And that's the first step to growth and to change. It's like, when you catch yourself slipping into these mindsets, literally stop. And because the fact is, you didn't say that, you didn't do that. So all of these what ifs, these thinking about the past and what you could have done, you're not focusing on what you could do to improve. So they studied what happens when people suppress their emotions, like putting on a poker face. So for example, putting on like a poker face while you're watching a sad or like film, they found that suppression reduces the outward expression, but it doesn't reduce the internal experience.
Wow.
In fact, increases psychological stress.
So that's why it's so important to let go of suppressing everything.
Allow yourself to feel your emotions. Express them.
Yeah.
Express your emotions to a friend, to your journal, to your mirror.
Think of it this way. Trying to hold an inflatable balloon underwater. The more you press it down, the more the pressure is going to bring it up. And once it does come up, it explodes. It shoots up, right?
It's gonna
And
pop
it
back
ends up
up.
hurting somebody or something like that. That's exactly what happens with your emotions. The more you suppress them, it's just going to come out worse in the end.
It will always come out. It just
It
won't
will
come
always
out.
come out. Yeah.
You can't control when it comes out. Wait. I have such a good point to make on
Okay.
this. Can we talk about the fact that people get into relationships, rebound relationships, when they are not healed? Don't
Don't
it.
just go from like person to person. You need to just sit with yourself. Be in a relationship
work.
with yourself. Do the work.
Be single. It's okay to be single. It's
And be
literally
with
fine.
yourself. See, oh my goodness, that's the thing. Some people are actually scared to be alone and with themselves. And I don't mean this.
Because they're scared of the work.
Yeah.
They're scared
And
of the
like, I
healing.
mean this like with the kindness in my heart. You guys, you have to recognize these people are not going to give you comfort. It's temporary. You are your only source of healing and comfort. You can't get that from somebody else.
Do better. We're saying that from the most loving way possible.
Yes.
Don't do it, guys.
All of this is with love. We are sharing
love.
this with love because we want you to be better.
Because a lot of these things we've done,
Mhm.
we know.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. I will definitely have her back on here.
I would love to. I would love to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Comment down below what your thoughts are, if you agree or disagree.
What you can relate to your life.
So please like, comment, and subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.